I opened my eyes and looked around me. I had no idea where I was or how I even got there. It took me a few seconds to realize I was in a hospital room. Suddenly, I sensed that I wasn't alone. I looked to my left and saw a man standing there looking at me. "Who are you?"
I'm your father.
"What?
Oh yeah, and you're a billionaire too.
What?" But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you do, you might become a millionaire just like me. I felt the cool water washing over my body. I wondered if I was dreaming, but as I opened my eyes, I realized that this was no dream. I sat up and looked around me. I was on a beach at the edge of the water, but I had no idea how I got there. In fact, I didn't even know who I was. I started to feel afraid, but I tried not to let the panic take hold of me. Some instinct told me that I needed to get up and make myself a place to shelter. I began to collect driftwood from the beach and dragged it up into a wooded area bordering the beach. I piled the pieces of wood together, along with branches and twigs that I found nearby. It didn't take me long before I had managed to build a reasonably secure place to sleep. I wondered if there was anyone else on the island. It didn't look as though it was inhabited, but I decided to take a look around. The island wasn't very big, and I managed to walk the whole way around it in an hour or so. I didn't see any sign of life. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Part of me was relieved that there wasn't some dangerous tribe living there. But when I realized that I was all alone on a deserted island, I began to feel really nervous. I decided that I should do something to keep myself busy. I had managed to build a shelter, so that was the first job done. The next thing I needed was something to eat. I looked around to see if there was anything I could use for a weapon. Hanging from a tree was a branch with a long pointed end. I pulled the branch down and snapped it from the tree. I picked up a stone and began filing away at the end until it was sharp. I can probably use that as a spear. I picked up the branch and made my way down to the water's edge. It was so clear I could see the big fish swimming around just below the surface. It took me a few tries, but eventually I managed to spear a fish. I went back up to my shelter and looked around to see if I could find anything else to eat. I saw a tree which was full of bananas and some leafy plant that looked a lot like spinach. I had all that I needed to make a decent meal. I made a fire and began to cook the fish. Day after day went by. My routine never changed. I would wake up, find food, cook it, eat it, and sleep. But one day, as I was making my way down to the water to catch a fish, I heard the distant sound of an engine. I looked up into the sky, squinting in the bright sunlight. There was definitely something in the distance, and it was headed this way. I quickly ran back up to my shelter and picked up the branches that I had prepared earlier. I laid them out on the sand until they spelled out the word help. The plane was almost overhead now. I began waving my arms and shouting as loud as I could. My heart was beating so fast I could hardly breathe. Please let them see me, please. But the plane just carried on. My heart sank, and I was just about to give up hope when I noticed the plane began to make a turn to the left. It came around in a circle and started descending. Yes, they've seen my sign. They're coming to get me. The pilot landed the plane and I went rushing over. Thank you for coming back.
Get in. You're safe now.
I climbed into the plane and lay down, but the exhaustion mixed with the relief of being rescued got the better of me. I passed out. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital room. I looked up and saw a man beside my bed. He looked kind of familiar, but I couldn't place him. Who are you? The man told me that he was my father. That came as a bit of a shock, but what was even more startling was that he told me I was the son of a billionaire. I couldn't believe what he was saying. I was rich, not just well off. I was really, really rich. What happened to me?
We're not really sure. A few weeks ago, you went for a drive around the country, but you never returned. We had no idea what happened to you.
So I've been missing all that time?
Yes, to be honest, we feared the worst. But thankfully you are safe. We're just so glad to have you home in one piece.
A few days later, the doctors said that I was able to go home. The man who was my father came to collect me and drove me home. I felt a bit weird driving along with him. He was my father, but it felt as though I was with a complete stranger. Eventually, we pulled up outside a huge mansion. Is this my house?
Yes, it is. Don't you recognize it?
I shook my head. No, there's nothing familiar about this place. The doctor had said that moving home might trigger some memories for me, but I didn't recall anything about my home. I had to be shown where my bedroom was, and the kitchen, bathroom, etc. When we sat down for dinner that evening, my family started bombarding me with questions about where I had been for the few weeks I was missing.
What happened on your drive?
Where did you go?
Have you any idea how you ended up on that island?
I'm sorry, I can't answer any of your questions. I don't remember anything at all. But that wasn't strictly true. I did have one memory, but I didn't reveal it then. Half because I wasn't really sure if it was real, but also because I just had a gut feeling that I shouldn't tell them. The memory I had was of a woman. I couldn't see her face, but she was wearing a necklace in the shape of a bird. I had no idea who the woman was, but whenever I thought of that memory, I felt safe and secure. It felt strange living back at home. For my family, life just went back to normal. But for me, it just felt really uncomfortable. They felt very different to me. It didn't take me very long to realize that my family was actually crazy. They threw lavish parties every night. Our house was always full of celebrities. They spent an obscene amount of money, and to be honest, I wasn't really sure that I liked that kind of lifestyle. Something made me doubt that I enjoyed living that kind of life. I thought that maybe I should get in touch with my friends. Perhaps if I met up with them, I would find out more about the real me. Father, I think it's time I met up with my friends, but I don't remember who they are.
To be honest, you never really had any friends. You were always just happy being here with your family.
It made me sad when I heard what he had to say. Surely, I must have at least one friend.
No, honestly, I can't think of a single one.
Another thing I didn't really like about my family, they treated the staff like slaves.
Fetch me a drink of water. Now. Come on, hurry up. What are you waiting for?
They spoke to them terribly, always bossing them around and never saying thank you. I felt really embarrassed when I saw how pompous and snobby they were. One night I was having trouble sleeping. My family were all fast asleep in bed, so I decided to go for a walk around the house. As I was walking along the hallway, I stopped in front of a huge family portrait hanging on the wall. I was looking at each family member, trying to recall anything about them, when suddenly I noticed something really odd about it. It looked like it had been photoshopped. My father's hand wasn't the same color as his face. I lifted the portrait to try to get a closer look, but as I did so, it pulled on a string. Suddenly, a doorway opened, revealing stairs leading down. Curiosity got the better of me, and I went down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs was a dungeon. As if that wasn't strange enough, in the dungeon were two people sitting huddled together in the corner. They hadn't noticed me at first, but as I stepped closer towards them, they looked up and cried out in joy.
Son!
It was my parents. But wait a minute, aren't my parents upstairs in bed? I began to feel really uncertain. Why did you call me son?
Because we are your real parents.
I had no idea if they were telling the truth or not, but something made me want to trust them. Come on, we'd better get you out of here. I helped break them free from their restraints, and we began to climb the stairs. As we went, my parents, my real parents, told me exactly what had been going on.
Those people upstairs are actually criminals. They kidnapped us and locked us away in the dungeon.
But they look just like you.
That's because they've been using masks to try to look like us. They're using us for our money. The only reason they kept us alive was because they needed us to get access to our wealth.
I was really shocked at what they told me.
We're so surprised that you're still here, though. We thought they might have kidnapped you, or even worse.
I told them how I had woken up on an island with no memory at all. I didn't know how I got there.
It seems to me like they probably did try to kidnap or get rid of you, but somehow you ended up in the ocean and washed up on shore.
We reached the top of the stairs and emerged from the doorway. Suddenly, I stopped dead in my tracks. My other parents were standing there. As soon as they saw us, my father pounced on my real dad and my mother jumped on my real mom. They started pounding each other with their fists, punches being thrown left, right, and center. At one point, one of my dads threw the other one against the wall and he slumped down in a heap. But just when I thought that was it, he jumped up from the floor and lunged at the other dad, knocking him to the floor. Both my moms had hold of each other's hair. They were pulling it and scratching at each other's faces. In the commotion, I couldn't tell who was who. I decided there was only one thing I could do. I grabbed my phone and called the police. When they arrived, my parents were all still fighting. The police broke up the fight and the four of them stood staring at me. Please, whoever's my real parents, just tell me. But they all stepped forward. I looked from one couple to the other. I couldn't tell them apart. They were even wearing the same pajamas, all of them.
I'm your real mom. Don't listen to her. No, I am.
I didn't know who to believe. Tell me something only my real mom would know.
Like what?
I thought for a moment, then it suddenly hit me like a flash. Tell me what kind of necklace my mom has.
It's a pendant in the shape of a bird.
I looked at her. You are right. You're my real mom. I turned to the police. These two are my real parents. The other two are the criminals. The police put handcuffs on my fake parents and began to lead them away.
We're your real parents, not them. You have to believe us.
I ignored their words. I knew who my real parents were. I hugged my mom and my dad. After that, things went back to normal in our house. The parties all stopped and no more celebrities came to visit. I was relieved that things had all worked out in the end. Finally, I felt that I was where I belonged. But just when I thought that everything was fine, something really strange happened. I was fast asleep in bed one night when a weird noise woke me up. When I opened my eyes, I saw that my dad was standing over me. He had a really odd look on his face. As I looked at him, I let out a whimper. My dad's face was peeling away, revealing a stranger's face underneath. Ah!